recording, and when you're ready.
What did she hear?
I jump at the sudden appearance of Misha, who I had not heard approaching despite the completely empty hallway. Somehow, she'd gotten the jumping distance to me without making a sound. Ugh, creepy. It briefly reminds me of Kenji's nutty theory about a global feminist conspiracy, but I pushed that thought aside. Shizune, standing slightly behind Misha, looks aloof as she couldn't have heard the remark that drew Misha's attention, but Misha is visibly excited.
No, wait. More importantly, who is in there? There's no club meetings today.
She tries to curiously peek past me, even through the door, prevents her from seeing anyway. What are you doing here?
You took so long that we had to come back to check what's wrong. That's no good, He-chan.
She wags her finger at me scoldingly.
I found plywood, but everything else is still missing because you were tardy.
Oh, sorry. I got the things here. I was just going to bring them.
I think you were up to some mischief, He-chan. Who was in there with you? I wonder.
Misha signs something quickly to Shizune, pointing at her own ear a couple of times. Shizune immediately pushes her way past me and opens the door into the classroom I had just left. I can only imagine the shock she is experiencing. With Shizune's diligence and attitude, the incidence of daring to deface the school property by sleeping on top of it must be too much to bear. And indeed, she stares at Rin, frozen in place, apart from the slight of noticeable trembling of her shoulders. From suppressed rage, I'm sure. Instead of blowing up, Shizune takes a few deep breaths, adjusts her glasses, and slams the door shut, turning to sign furiously at Misha. Ugh. Maybe she did blow up and I can't understand it. She shoots it very low to stare at me too, as if some way it's my fault that Rin is sleeping on one of the desks. I hope she's not getting any funny ideas about the reason of my tardiness.
Hello?
Rin's voice comes by the side of the door, and it takes a few eye blinks to realize that she might have trouble opening it. I open the door and find Rin directly behind it, looking at us with a half-interested, half-sleepy face.
Hello?
Miss Tezuka, what do you think you were doing? You absolutely are not permitted to use school property for such, disgraceful activity.
It sure is suddenly getting very crowded in here. I didn't know I was this popular.
It's hard to say whether she's happy or unhappy about this turn of events. And anyway, she ignores Shizune Misha's scolding, so they have no choice but to drop the issue. Shizune taps Misha's shoulder, points at Rin and makes some quick signs.
Popularity aside, please don't do that anymore. Anyway, how's your project going? Will it be done for the festival?
Rin looks at them blankly, apparently at ease under the pressure. Shizune's cold stare is putting on her. Good.
I keep wondering about that myself too.
And?
We'll think about it harder.
As Misha signs a reply to Shizune, her face turns into an unsatisfied frown.
Miss Tezuka, please try to take this seriously. It'll be a disaster if the wall looks like someone threw up their lunch onto it.
Rin nods assertively.
We'll think more seriously.
Misha actually giggles at that, but Shizune doesn't, not even after translation. She just shakes her head, takes the materials from me, and takes off with Misha in tow. Rin frowns thoughtfully as she looks after the retreating student console duo.
How rude. It's true though. I must finish my project before the weekend. There will be dire consequences if I don't. The end of the world as we know it. Like weekends usually are, but more dire. Much more dire. Maybe I'll postpone my nap to unforeseen future.
I'm about to ask what project she has, and what are these apocalyptic consequences, but she walks back to the art classroom.
Since you have nothing to do, would you give me a hand? This paint can doesn't fit into my bag, but I need it.
She kicks lightly a huge can of paint that's lying on the floor next to the table she was sitting and sleeping on. It lets out a dull clang. Being the gentleman that I am, I naturally pick it up. Heavy. Yeah, sure. Where do you need to take it?
Away.
And with that, she's off to the hallway, me and the paint can following since there's little choice for either of us. The hallway is quiet and empty now that Shizune and Misha are gone, so we two leave towards the stairwell at the other end. Every 10 or 15 minutes, every 10 or 15 or 20 steps that I have to change the can from one hand to the another because the thin handle cuts into my palms. At least it keeps my arms from tiring too fast. Rin strolls on beside me with an uneven pace that I have trouble matching. Or maybe I'm just walking weird because of the extra weight. It seems one of us is constantly walking too slow or too fast. I can't figure it out which. 2 flights of stairs below, trouble appears in the form of a head nurse and his fox-like grin.
Ah, Mr. Nakai. What a happy coincidence. Tezuka too, of course.
He nods courteously to Rin, who doesn't acknowledge him back. Then turns to me because obviously it's me who he has some business with.
There's something I forgot to mention on Monday.
I nodded, waiting impassively because I can't begin to guess what he's forgotten. The feeling of the handle delving deeper into my skin doesn't make me feel enthusiastic about this interruption either.
It's about your medication. Since you haven't been that long on your current medication, there might be some unexpected side effects, which might require adjusting dosages or even changing to another kind of medication. So, we'll do a few tests regularly. But what I'd want is... No, dear, I'm going to do that again. So, we will do a few tests regularly. But what I'd want is for you to keep an eye on everything in your condition that feels off, if you get what I mean. Nausea, headache, anything. And come see me if something happens.
Alright.
So, how are you? Everything fine?
I give up and drop the can to the floor before answering him. Apparently, this takes longer than my biceps can handle. I'm about to say something generic as an answer, but then I realize how often I've done that lately. Other people ask me that too. Teachers and students here, my parents, visitors, nurses, doctors at the hospital. Everyone seems to be concerned about that. It's natural for a hospital it's natural for a hospital, not so much a school. Except this school. This is a small school, and both the students' base and faculty seem to be very tightly knit. At least that's the feeling I'm getting. And this is not the kind of school that gets transfer students too often. I thought it says shivers on our spine, but I give a generic answer anyway.
That's great. Also, one other thing. My sources tell me that you've been at neither the school track nor even the pool. So I'd like to know if you've taken up exercising as I asked.
Of course I haven't, but his way of inquiring gives me the feeling that I should have been running my ass off the track since the very first day. You have people spying on me?
Not as such. I just happen to know a few people. But that's not the issue here, so don't try to slip out of it.
Well, I was actually just doing some improvised weightlifting as an exercise. I pick up and lift the can up and down a few times, like a sad imitation of a bodybuilder, even though it's weighing down my arms painfully. The stupid grin disappears from his face for a second, then comes back like it was never gone.
Tezuka, will you give us a second?
The nurse grabs me by my shoulder without waiting for Rin's permission, which he didn't need in the first place, and drags me aside.
When I told you to exercise, I wasn't joking. I understand that you are still on your first week and all, but please don't ignore the importance of this. The reason I'm coming down this hard on you is that hobbits? Like the little gremlin guys?
They're not easy to form.
I know. I was hoping that we can talk about this, especially in private. I might be a little embarrassed having Rin hear about this.
I'm sorry, you were saying something?
The reason I'm coming down this hard is...
Oh, come on! That was just doing just fine! Oh, come on!